Okay, welcome back to me in the backyard in the snow, weathering the elements for you so I can review books for you about nature. So at the end of last year, I read this book that I'm pulling up on this chair next to my hand lotion. Sharks Don't Sink by Jasmin Graham. And I picked this book up after reading Cobalt Red, which is like about cobalt mining in the Congo. And it was so fucking sad, but it was a really good book. It was really, 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 really good. And yeah, even thinking about it is starting to make me sad. So I'm gonna just we could talk about that at a different time. But basically, after reading that book, I was like, okay, my siblings were kind of like, you need to read a fun book. Like, why are you being so sad? Why are you reading such sad things? Don't you want to have fun? Don't you want to have fun? Do you like fun? Be fun. So I had this book that I had checked out from the library, which we should all be doing. And it's kind of about, it's not kind of about, but the description of the book was like, oh, Jasmine is like a black shark scientist and she started this organization for other like minorities and like women, non-binary people in shark science. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a cute little read about sharks. I'm going to learn about sharks. And it's going to like, I was going into it being like, I feel like this might have a surface level like examination of social issues. I don't know why. I have a lot of baggage from being in like an organization recently that was really intense. Um, so I was just kind of like, is this going to be a rigorous social analysis? But I don't think it needs to be. And that's what was going to make it more lighthearted. So basically, I loved this book, and I think Jasmine Graham, the author, is so cool. And sometimes I forget that I'm a big old nerd and that I love like hearing people talk about one, their like niche interests, two, like their research processes, three, how they're rebelling against institutions. And you get all three of those things from this book. One thing we get into in this book is like there is like rampant misogyny. Like, I don't know about you, but I genuinely thought that there are like 20 shark scientists. There's a lot of shark scientists. It's a lot of white men, and they're cutting up. They're cutting up real bad. They're like being abusive and misogynistic, and you really get to see that. It's there's also like a lot of talks about racism that the author experiences through working in this field, and like why she ultimately is like, I'm gonna do independent research about sharks on my own. And she's like so smart. There's like mentors of her who like offer to just like give her a pass into a PhD program because they're like, we love working with you, you're so smart. And she's like, nah, I literally hate studying in these colleges with you people. Like, well, it's not that dramatic, but like, I don't know. I just thought she was so awesome because I would say yes every time. If somebody offered me a little pass into an institution, even though I know I would hate it, I'd say yes. And like, I don't know, because I just feel like I wouldn't feel like I could do those things on my own without, I don't know, I feel like I have been conditioned to like wait for somebody to give you the opportunity, and you're like waiting for somebody to see your brilliance, and then they're like, we want to offer you this, and then you take it, and then you live happily ever after. But Jasmine, she was like, no girl, this I I'm so excited to talk about this book. It's actually so dorky. but she's like, I'm gonna make my own path. And I feel like I really, really, really needed to read a story like this about somebody who like is connecting the dots between like how black people are treated and how we treat our like marine life, and how we're like, we kind of, I mean, we're destroying the sharks' environments, we're destroying our environments that we live in, making those types of connections, trying to bring in marginalized people into shark science. The book, like, kind of talks about her relationship to her dad and how her dad got her into fishing, and like how that just like built a relationship between her and the environment in the ocean, where it's like a calming space for her. And it was just like really beautiful to read about their relationship. And then towards the end, asked her dad to like work on a research project with her. And it was just like really beautiful to like see her have this like kind of full circle moment and be able to like bring her dad, who has inspired her, into her work. I feel like that was really cool to read about. But yeah, this book was just awesome. It's Sharks Don't Sink: Adventures of a Rogue Shark Scientist. The cover is beautiful. It's short. It's a cute, fun read. There is like sexual abuse and racism, intimidation, and you're like, it's a book about sharks. Why are we getting into all that? Um, but I mean, like any other place on this world, unfortunately, it can be touched by anti-blackness and misogyny and all those things. So that was a super great read. And then because I was obsessed with that and was like, oh my God, am I going to become a shark scientist? I remembered that I had read this book, or I had picked up this book, Undrowned, by Alexis Pauline Gumbs. And you might know Alexis Pauline Gumbs because she like runs in circles with like Adrienne Marie Brown. And this is a part of the Emergent Strategy series. So I picked this up in like 2021, and I read a couple chapters, but then I, just put the book down. I mean, at a different point in my life, it was really hard for me to finish a book. So that is no slight towards Undrowned. And this one was like more of a difficult read for me. I mean, I don't think that I enjoyed it as much as Sharks Don't Sink. Sharks Don't Sink, I feel like I don't know, it was perfect. It's what I needed at the time. And I was kind of like, oh, I'm interested in a writer who's like talking about and critiquing capitalism, and like is a black feminist openly, and like has certain political principles and ideology, and is also bringing that in to like talk about marine life and the ocean. And so I was excited about having that angle come in and like fill out my understanding of that like world. But the writing itself I wasn't into. However, like the book is set up to be like, it's kind of like mimicking how guidebooks are read. I don't know if you know about guidebooks. And like there are like guidebooks written for like, if you live in a certain area, you can pick up a book of like, these are all the birds in the area, and it'll kind of like give information about them. And so she's kind of mimicking that, and she's like trying to critique the like sterile like scientific language that those texts are usually written in, but then like will subvert that by like inserting in other language, like I love you, like she talks about in kind of like interviews too about the book, that she's like, these scientists who go study marine life, they'll sometimes move just to be where these animals live, or or they like dedicate their whole lives studying them, that is like a love for this animal, but they have to kind of suppress that in the way that they talk about the animals to have like an unbiased, like, ooh, my hands are so cold I can barely do the quotations. To have like an unbiased view of how they're talking about the animals because it's supposed to be scientific, and like, and she's talking about how like that kind of creates a separation between humans and animals and like wildlife and nature, and that kind of like creates the, I mean, this is kind of me inserting some of my opinions in language now of like that is the type of, that separation between nature and humans is kind of what lays the groundwork for us to like exploit nature and like destroy it, and those are the types of things that lead to like the I almost said the carbon crisis. It's kind of that, the climate crisis, or climate change, if you don't want to be catastrophizing. Um, so, all of those things I love. But the execution of how it was written, I was not loving. I think I just like a book that is like, everything is like in a narrative. So even if it was like the same things, but it was more like, I went to this place and I was studying this thing and I thought about the animals like this, and then my thoughts changed, and then I realized that I love the animal. This is written more like a scientific textbook with like love language inserted in, and I appreciate that. And it's already like influenced different ways that I've talked about nature in my own writing. Like I've been trying to work on little zines in like the same way that I want this YouTube video for YouTube YouTube channel to be a place where I can just like put the ideas I'm reading about into something quickly. I was writing a zine about the separation between humans and nature, and I was like, oh, I'm writing about loving nature a lot, and that feels like Undrowned. That feels like something I picked up from Undrowned. Even though I didn't, it's not like a book I love. I can already see the ways that it's influencing me and like changing the ways that I approach writing or relating to nature. So that's super cool. And then, because I was reading both of these books, one of my siblings recommended that I watch the movie Blue Carbon. And this is like a documentary about, well, blue carbon. And, and blue carbon is like basically the ocean and like different ecosystems in the water, like absorbing excess carbon in our atmosphere, like mangroves and seagrass and something else. There was like a third thing, but the that documentary is kind of like following this DJ, Jayda Guy, or Jayda G, I think is her performance name. And she is like a huge DJ. I've never heard of her before. And I think it's funny that I would find a DJ through exploring nature documentaries. But she's also like a marine toxicologist. Like, she studied that too. So the documentary is like in one part her trying to explore how she can like lean into her like desire to do something good and like talk about what's happening to our environment and the climate crisis, climate change. But she's also like, how do I bring those ideas into my art? And it was just really cool to watch her because I feel like I have that like concern of like, I don't want to just make art just to make art and to make something cool. Like, I also want to like do something that makes the world a more livable place. Like, if I can contribute to that type of conversation or like push into that direction in any way, I'll do it. And so it was nice to see somebody else like trying to process that. there was lots of cool moments. Like there was a moment where she's kind of following this group who's like being paid by big corporations to like do some kind of carbon credit thing, and she's like, why don't the people here get to decide how they're working and when they work? Like she was standing up for the workers, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so glad she's not like falling for this BS carbon credit program. She seemed really cool, and like she knows that the way forward in tackling a lot of our environmental concerns is to center like black women or like people who are the most affected by the impacts of climate change, like people in the global south, or people that our trash is getting sent to for no freaking reason, like if you're from America. So yeah, it was just really cool to like watch her bounce between the two worlds as an artist and as like an environmentalist. And she is like this beautiful black woman, and I was like, how has she figured out all this stuff? How has she blended these worlds together so well? And she's like a little bit older than me, so I was like, oh my gosh, maybe once I have aged to be her age, I will have like a good balance between these two worlds I'm trying to occupy too. So that was really good for me to see as well. So I feel like overall, reading these three books was like, they were just like important for me to see as somebody who is trying to like be creative, but also like wants to get rid of all of our oppressive systems and doesn't want to die in a climate event, and like wants the world, just wants to like spin around in the forest or something. Yeah, yeah. Black people, nature, love it. The ocean. And I love the ocean. One time I jumped into the ocean with my glasses on because I was just so ready to be swept up by the waves. And so I was bound to be into all this content about black women in their ocean studies. So I'm really glad I read those books, and like got to sit with or just be like inspired by these people and their like passion for their research, their like willingness to go to be unconventional about how they're going about things, to be a rogue scientist, to be a marine mammal apprentice, to be a black marine toxicologist DJ. I really need to see that because I'll be like, oh, I'm the only one in the world trying to figure this out. That is not true. That is not true at all. And I just felt like connected to their stories. So I'm glad I read these books. And you should probably read them too because they're fun. And well, one of them is a one of them is a documentary. You should watch that. But you should also read these books, and maybe you'll like Undrowned more than me because a lot of people do like it. And you'll probably, I don't know. Yeah, read all the books. Whew. Thanks for watching. It's freezing. My hands are turning different colors. Goodbye.